Hi, I'm George Lynch. Welcome to my studio, and I'm here to take you on a tour of some of my iconic guitars and my workhorses, the guitars I use to record my records with, and specifically the new Lynch Mob 30th Anniversary Reimagined Wicked Sensation album. And here we have an ESP Skull and Snakes, otherwise referred to as the Hajji Guitar. This is really the Wicked Sensation guitar. It has the Wicked Sensation John Desmuke's artwork graphic on it. And so it's a fitting instrument to use for the album. I use this on almost every record that I work on, particularly because it has a Sustainiac on board installed into it. This is actually not the Sustainiac brand. This is the hard driver version, which I really like. But they all kind of work on the same principle. This is a dummy single coil pickup. This is your selector switch, and you can select high gain or low gain. And then this is the amount of the effect right here. This is your regular guitar volume. And it works like an E-bow or like a violin bow. An electric version of this. And I use it for solos as well occasionally. Used it on many records. KXM, Lynch Mob, Dirty Shirley, Sweet and Lynch. Just about basically everything I've worked on, I've used this at least on one song or two. This is my main guitar, at least at the moment. This is a Kamikaze, ESP Kamikaze. It's a very early one. It's not the original, but it's again like an early 90s version. So it's Japanese made, ebony fingerboard, DiMarzio pickup, countersunk Floyd, heavy maple body, and reverse banana headstock. And I use this pretty much to track everything initially, and then I'll put this away and I'll add some complementary guitars, which we'll talk about in a second. Here's another interesting guitar that I had made at the Japanese custom shop, along with another ESP endorser, Aswan Prashant. We were friends and decided to collaborate on guitar. We called this the Ohm Guitar. It's a prototype, as I said. It never went into production. But what's interesting about it is it has a kill switch, for one, which is kind of cool. And you can get that effect, kind of like turning off and on the toggle switch. While you're playing with left hand. Also, this is a more rounded radius at the nut and flatter radius where it meets the body. It's a compound neck, compound radius. Tilt back headstock. Got a single coil pickup in there as well, with a tele control setup. So it's kind of a hybrid vehicle. And I use this primarily for solos. Not a lot of solos, but occasionally for solos, because I like switching between the single coil and the humbucking. And also I like the radius neck, and if there's a place on the record I want to use a kill switch, this is the guitar, my go-to guitar for that. This is a custom shop ESP. That there are only two in existence, and it has the double mother of pearl skulls at the 12th fret, locking tuners, and it's just a wonderful sounding guitar. And it's like a traditional tremolo system, not a Floyd Rose. Very wide flat neck, and it's an interesting story about this guitar. I played it at a festival in Idaho many years ago, and got caught up in the moment and got real excited, and I was having a good time. And at the end of the last song, I took the guitar and threw it to the audience, thinking that my crew would run out and get the guitar and retrieve it for me, but they weren't able to do that. And the last thing I remember seeing is somebody with the guitar, raising the guitar, waving it way in the back of the crowd, walking towards the parking lot. And I hadn't, never saw it again. Up until recently, I was able to purchase it back. I found it. It was brought to my attention that it was for sale, and I purchased it back. And here it is. So I've been using this. The first record I used this since I got it back is on this 30th anniversary. I used it on a couple solos. This is the Esp Ultra Tone. This is a model of mine that we released in the 90s, mid to late 90s, in the late 90s I believe. You don't see a lot of these. It's a pretty rare guitar now, I think. One of the really interesting things about this is it has the mini humbuckers, much like the Gibson Firebird, which we're emulating to a certain point. It's got a custom designed bridge and a lot of different wiring options, so you can get out of phase and different combinations of pickups and so forth with all these different selector switches. And I use this for, I would say, surf tone would be one of the things I would use this for. Now it's not something that I use very often, but occasionally we just need a big, open, twangy sound. And coupled with the right amplifier, like let's say a 65 Super Reverb that's relatively clean, you can achieve that with this guitar because of these pickups and so forth. So it's a interesting animal. Now this is another main piece that I use in the studio. This is an ESP custom shop telly, which is pretty interesting sounding. Very fat and warm. And you can get anything from Van Halen sounds to metal sounds to country sounds to classic rock sounds with this. And what I really like to use it for is once I've got my bed of rhythm guitars, my heavier rhythms, I throw another track of this over the top and it just gives it that kind of big telly splang, you know, and it just sounds real wiry and alive. So this is a very important piece of the puzzle. So I really value this guitar. I wouldn't use it alone live to carry the whole band because it just doesn't have a big enough sound because it is a telly. And the kind of music we play, I need something with humbucking pickups and so forth. But for recording, it's just phenomenal. Okay, here's a guitar that I really love, and I collaborated with ESP on this. This is called the Super V, and what I was attempting to do was recreate a guitar I had as a kid, which was the 1960 Les Paul Special. It's all mahogany guitar with P90s. What I loved about that guitar was very warm with the the mahogany body and very growly, and so it had a fixed neck as well, which this does also. So this is all mahogany with a fixed neck, pretty much a Gibson profile, a Gibson scale, and also has a P90 pickup in the neck as well as a PAF style pickup, a Super V pickup in the bridge. It's relatively low output. Everything's distressed. It's got the translucent cherry finish like the Gibsons had, and it's a very warm, dark guitar. And so when I need that for recording something with those kind of qualities, this is my go-to. I don't use it a whole lot, but it's just real chunky and very 70s sounding. Hi, here's another oddity, to say the least. This is called the Aardvark, ESP Aardvark, and this is a one-off made by John Gadesi at the ESP factory here in Los Angeles. And the idea behind this was that I would have a guitar with a Floyd and a hardtail all on one body. The actually thing that's great about this guitar is there's so much wood here that it actually has a really big sound. A big slab of wood, big sound. It's extremely heavy. It's not a practical guitar to play live. But if you're sitting down in the studio, I use it. I use the hardtail part of the guitar for just big giant chords sometimes when I just need big G and D and E and A chords. Just bang those out on this thing and it just sounds huge. Well, this is my ESP 12-string electric. This is also a very valuable instrument. When I get to the point with a song where I feel I need to add something, some kind of chimey, chorusy, semi-clean, jangly part on top of it, a lot of times this is the answer. I mean, I don't want to overuse it, but beyond that, on this particular record, the 30th anniversary Lynch Mob record, I used it exclusively. It's the only guitar on 4 Million Years. So the whole guitar is 12 string except for the solo, of course. Which maybe I should have did the solo with the 12 string. That would have been interesting. But yeah, it gets that sound like the Byrds, 8 miles high, and it's just a wonderful, wonderful sounding instrument. So this is an interesting guitar. This is actually an Ltd Viper. It's not a really expensive guitar, but it has a very unique sound to it, and it's a baritone. So 27-inch scale length. It's got Emg pickups. I normally don't use Emg pickups, active pickups, but on this guitar in particular, they do sound great. For some reason, I don't know why. They just have a certain chemistry with this guitar. I've tried putting in passive pickups and it doesn't sound good. So this is also a 2-octave neck and just a hardtail. And what I use this for is as a supplemental instrument underneath my rhythms, my basic rhythms, to kind of just stiffen things up and add some heaviness. If it's a particular heavy part and I just want to just give it some girth, I'll throw this in just underneath. And you might not even hear it consciously, but you sort of feel it. So it's a really interesting, great guitar. It's kind of one of my secret weapons. When I was in Tokyo recording the Guitar Bible instructional video, I believe it's 1986 or 1987, somewhere around there, ESP loaned me a vintage Les Paul to shoot some of the video with, and I loved it, and they said that they could make a recreation for me at the custom shop, which they did, and this is what they made, which I have since recently added this Floyd Rose bridge to as an experiment and just onto the existing bolts here, so I didn't have to change anything, so I can go back to stock if I need to. Didn't harm the guitar, have to cut any wood out. But this is what I use for, again, when I need a Les Paul, because only Les Pauls do Les Paul. You need that really chunky kind of thing, especially in the rhythms. This is what I've been using over the last, 30 years. It's kind of another secret weapon of mine. So this is a vintage 74 Stratocaster. I bought this guitar last year and at a guitar show, and I went through about half a dozen guitars over a period of a few hours and fell in love with this one. It's not really a collector's guitar, it's more of a player's guitar. I mean, it's not one of the most desirable Strats. It has a big headstock, it has a 3-bolt neck plate, it's a hardtail, very thin neck and a bullet truss rod and very large frets. Obviously it's been refretted, but it just has the magic. So I use this occasionally for when I want to get that kind of Stevie Ray, Hendrix kind of vibe. This is what I'll go to. So I hadn't really actually owned a Strat for years, and for most of my career actually, so I finally felt I needed to get one to have in my arsenal, because when you need a Strat, you just need a Strat. Nothing else will get that sound. So here we have a 59 Les Paul Jr., completely stock, completely worn out. You can see all the patina and the wear on the back of the neck. Fret dots are most of them are popped out. A lot of divots and wear on the rosewood fingerboard, Brazilian rosewood board, original P90, but this thing just sounds so wonderful. Again, just used for very specific kind of things. So I'm a big fan of Leslie West for mountains. So this is I consider this my Leslie West guitar. So I want that growl and that chunk. I'll go to this, and again, it's got the P90s, so it's not a humbucking pickup, so it does a different thing. A little bit smaller sound, I guess, in a way, but dirtier. And it's just a really beautiful, beautiful instrument. So I can't just let this sit in the wall. I got to play it somewhere on every record, at least one note. Now this is another oddity. I found this at a pawn shop while I was on the road. One of the things I like to do when I'm on tour during the afternoons is go look around at pawn shops and mom and pop music stores and look for old cheap guitars and amps and bargains, and you know, who knows what you're going to find, and it's a lot of fun. I found this Epiphone, which is obviously an SG style guitar. Not a collectible guitar in any sense, not particularly old. But when I got it home, I found that it had a twisted neck. So at that point, it's pretty useless. But what I did was I shimmed up the nut and jacked up the bridge pretty high, and I used this only for slide. So you know, there's a couple of songs on the new record, 30th anniversary album, where I use this just specifically for slide only. And it kind of sounds ratty and wrangly, but it's cool. You know, my thought is that, you know, when you listen to some of the old blues players playing slide and stuff, they weren't playing necessarily expensive instruments. They just were playing whatever they had sitting around, pawn shop stuff, whatever stuff that was loaned and borrowed to them, and whatever they could find. And so that was my philosophy with this. It's just a found instrument. And just about every record I do, I've got acoustic work to do as well. We usually have a ballad, or we overlay some acoustic guitars on, let's say, a verse, you know, first half of a verse or something like that, or maybe some strumming of some chords just to bring out some, lift the chorus a little bit. Who knows? But there's always a use for an acoustic guitar on just about every record I do. And this is one of my favorites that I like to use for overdubbing acoustics. This is an 80s Gibson J200. It does have electronics on it built in. We got an input here and the controls here. Quite honestly, I would prefer to have a late 50s or a 60s J200 or a Hummingbird. I've had 3 Hummingbirds. They've all been stolen, so I eventually stopped investing in the very expensive vintage acoustic instruments, and this is a good workhorse. It works very well. It has the qualities of a good J200. It's got that big low end, like you hear on early Zeppelin records and Crosby, Stills and Nash records. You know, and you add some compression to it, some tube compression, some 1176, or some Pool Tech, and it just brings everything out, all those nice qualities, especially if you have good condenser, sensitive condenser mic. So this is a beautiful instrument, and it's a workhorse. This is my second favorite acoustic guitar. This is a Washburn, and Washburn is one of the oldest guitar companies in America. I think the second oldest guitar company in America. And this is a recreation of one of the first guitars they made. And it's really a natural. It sounds beautiful. It feels great. It's got an interesting profile on the neck. It's what we call a boat neck. So I guess back in those days what they would do is they would just hand shape the necks like this, and thus you got this kind of V. And it's honestly very ergonomic and very comfortable. I actually prefer it in a lot of ways, and it's also very stable, having this ridge here. So, and I love the way it's distressed and antiqued, and where the J200 has a big bottom, this has more of a focus center middle kind of tone to it. So this again is my number 2 choice for recording acoustic guitars. This is a beautiful resonator, actually a tricone National steel guitar. This is a baritone version, so it's tuned low, open tuning. I'm not sure. I think it's just a random tuning that I sort of did by ear. I haven't really measured what it is. And I use this on the new Lynch Mob record, the 30th anniversary album, for some of the swampier stuff on River of Love, things like that. Just underneath, just to give it a little jangle and swampy kind of feel, you know, on those bluesier tracks. I've used it on other things like Dirty Shirley, wherever I needed sort of a kind of you know, that same kind of feel, you know. So